Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the beginning of the last days. I am having a blast going through this. I didn't know I was going to live through a great awakening. I thought that was something that was in history books, but we find ourselves in a very strange way in an awakening. And every single day, don't you worry. People are waking up. It's slow. We're kind of sad that it's slow for some people because we wish it was faster and that we could all be on the same page. But we're getting there. And more information coming out about what has happened to us, about the harms that have come from the lockdowns. That is very prevalent. You can find lots of articles about that. The evidence is in the data that the government is able to now not deny. And I think this is good. I really do. I don't know what to do about watching what's going on with Trump down there in the United States of America. We're going to cover that just a little bit. I don't know if we were able to get that. Tucker Carlson summed it up last night like nobody's business, what this is all really about. And when we weaponize the district attorney, when we weaponize the justice system in order to have a political end for one party, you've lost your democracy. And I also don't know what you think about, hopefully we've got a picture of Xi Jinping, President Xi Jinping. I love just saying that name, Xi Jing. I love it. That's so cool. We should start naming our kids stuff like that. Xi Jinping and Putin are our best friends now. Biden, is that what you thought was a good idea? That they would be shaking hands, standing together, and planning together against the world. Did you think that was a good idea? Because that's what's happened. President Trump warned of things like this, where you start getting the enemies, former enemies, together, and then they go against us. They go against North America. Wow, fantastic. So all of the ins you've ever had with China that you've been trying to defend, and I think Biden's compromised. He's probably being blackmailed. That's how they can let this big balloon float slowly over. Well, it floated over Canada. It floated slowly over the entire United States. And with everyone going, right? How did that happen? Well, I think we have a compromised government. Probably a compromised Canadian government and a compromised US government. And somebody told me that on Twitter, Jamie, a friend of mine, he said that on Twitter, he was talking about how many people are leaving Canada in droves and that his tweet got taken down. Weird, right? I said to him, why would that tweet? Right now, we're allowed to say pretty much anything we want on Twitter, and it's all fine. So I don't understand that. I love to read from my dad's Bible. We've got an action-packed lineup today. Many of you have heard in Canada, especially British Columbia, about John Rustad, and he is a hero, really, for Canadians, and you're going to see why in a few minutes. So before I get to that, my dad's Bible is, of course, underlined from stem to stern. Look how old that thing is. I love that my dad loved the Bible. So he underlined every single page, something that was important today. It falls to Psalms 102, verse 25. And I'm going to try to say it in modern day English, okay? Because the these and the thous, my dad loved that. All right, in verse 25 of Psalms 102, of old hast thou laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands. They shall perish, but you will endure. Yes, all of them shall wax old like a garment. As a vesture shall you change them, as they shall be changed. But you are the same, and your years shall have no end. I'm pretty happy about something. We have a short shelf life here on this planet. We have only a few days to make our impact, to be people of destiny that change the world. It takes only one person, really. We've seen it. Mahatma Gandhi, Sugar Ray Leonard. You like that one? Just kidding. It just came to my mind. Sorry, my husband's not happy that I said that. Okay. People, one person. has changed the world several times. They make such an impact that the whole world changes. I mean, let's look at Jesus for one thing, right? That's a good one. Not Sugar Ray Leonard. Oh, he was great though, wasn't he? I mean, yeah, he was good. Okay, I was throwing some sort of sports thing in there. I don't know why he doesn't appreciate it. Before we get there, there is a couple things going on. We're going to end up seeing Katie Telford have to testify. Is that the case? Do we have anything on that today, or should we just, we have a website? Trudeau's Chief of Staff, Katie Telford, to testify on foreign interference at the committee. This is very good. Hopefully she's not a liar like the rest of them, right? I hope so. I hope she's going to tell the truth. I hope she's going to understand you are under oath and you must speak the truth. That would be a very good thing, wouldn't it? Because there's a lot of people not willing to tell the truth anymore. They will sacrifice their souls to lie. I don't get it, because I think there's a day of reckoning for every person's life. I don't know why you'd lie. I really don't. I don't want to live a life where, first of all, you have to keep track of your lies, and in the end, you lose your reputation. You will be found out. Whatever's in the dark will come to light, and you'll be found out. And let's all remember, everybody thinks Prime Minister Trudeau's getting away with all of this corruption. It takes only one moment, with one flick of God's baby finger, for Mr. Trudeau to be removed. I believe that day's coming. I don't know what challenge it'll be. Will it be the China infiltration? Will it be CSIS having reported to him that we've got all kinds of election interference, him doing nothing about it? Is that what's going to happen? I don't know. But it's building, and I'm enjoying it. I hope you are too. All right, so let's bring on our guest, Mr. John Rustad. He is the Conservative Party of BC MLA for Nechako Lakes, and that's right in the middle of British Columbia, as I've learned. And he did something incredible really recently. If you haven't heard about this, he stood up for what he believed. He stood up for the constituents of his riding, and he got shut down by the Liberal provincial party. And he had to say, hey, I'm not backing down. I was elected for the people. So we're going to get that story. Mr. Rustad, thank you for waiting in the background. We are just so happy to have you here.
Laura-Lynn, thank you very much for having me on your show.
So how did it happen, sir? I have been hearing from everyone, you've got to talk to John Rustad. You've got to have him on your show. You've got to talk to him. I'm like, who's John Rustad? And then I kind of, got some wind of some strength you showed in the middle of standing up for your community. So if you could give us the story and a little bit of your background, because you've been in politics since 2005.
Yeah, so I was first actually elected as a trustee in 2002, and then provincially since 2005. And I was part of the BC Liberal Party for almost 22 years. And I've served in cabinet positions of Minister for Aboriginal Relations and Reconciliation, as well as Minister of Forest Lands and Natural Resource Operations. But in fall, or in December of 2021, the federal government put out a paper on what they call the Farm Emissions Reduction Strategy. And I didn't even hear about this paper until last spring of 2022. And so I went within the BC Liberals, I went to them and said, hey, look, we've got to have a discussion about climate policies. And they said, okay, we'll put it on the agenda. Well, that was April went by and they didn't put it on, and May went by and they didn't put it on. It was supposed to be in a planning session in July, and they canceled the planning session. Well, the deadline for submissions to this paper was September, so I figured I had to actually start speaking up about this. And the reason for it is this paper wants to reduce nitrogen-based fertilizer use by 30% or more, and they want to reduce cattle herds. And my ridings, 35% of my riding is agriculture-based, particularly cow-calf operations. So it'd be decimating for my riding. So I felt I really needed to have a voice on this and speak out. So it was. I started doing a little bit on social media, and I retweeted a tweet from Patrick Moore, which kind of questioned the role of CO2 in terms of climate change. That was on a Sunday, and I thought, really didn't think anything of it. Well, all of a sudden on a Wednesday, I start getting these phone calls. And I had taken the day off because the next day was my birthday. And so I get all these phone calls from the party and notes and stuff coming in. I thought, you know what, I'm not going to respond. Like, I'm taking the day off. I'll respond the next day. So I arranged to speak with the leader about it. And he was angry with me. And he said, look, you've got to take down that tweet. And I said, what tweet? I didn't even remember what it was that was the big issue, because all it was a retweet, right? It wasn't even anything original. And so he said, look, we have a climate policy. We want to keep promoting this policy. We want all of our MLAs to parrot the same message on this because we don't want to create any controversy. And I said, look, I've got to stand up for my constituents. This is an issue that's going to impact, a third of my economy in my riding. I need to add a voice to this. And he said, no, sorry, you either have to parrot our party lines or you can't be part of our caucus. And I said, I was elected to represent my riding and the people in my riding. So he said, okay, fine, hung up on me. And half an hour later, he kicked me out of caucus. So I look at it now in hindsight and think that was actually a pretty good birthday present they gave me, because it has freed me to actually stand up and to be able to speak, my feelings, my thoughts, and be able to stand up and fully be able to support the people in my riding as well as people across the province.
Well, I thank you for that, because you're rare. People are not doing this. They are bowing to the leadership. We've seen it in federal politics. We've seen it in provincial politics. And something is really right about you standing up for the people in your riding. And, recently the Dutch farmers had a huge victory. There was an election based on these exact same things. John, why are they trying to eliminate the cows? Did you say they wanted to reduce
Yep.
what is the reason for that they say?
So I don't mean to be crude by saying this, but they somehow think that if they stop cows from farting, it's going to change the weather. I mean, It's
Right.
ridiculous. That and this nitrogen-based fertilizer. And what people don't realize is 40% of the food supply that we have today in the world comes from using nitrogen-based fertilizer. So if you're talking about eliminating nitrogen-based fertilizer or even reducing it, you're talking about a significant food shortage. 345 million people in the world today are facing a severe food insecurity. You start reducing the food supply, you're talking about hundreds of millions of people, if not even into billions of people, that are actually going to starve. And in good conscience, I can't stand up and support those kinds of policies. It makes no sense whatsoever to be doing this. And, back in 1970, there was a person named Norman Borlaug who received the Nobel Peace Prize, and he was accredited for saving over 1 billion lives for the Green Revolution. And the Green Revolution was introduction of synthetic fertilizers, nitrogen-based fertilizers, as well as other measures to dramatically improve our food production in this planet. And so, for some reason, this narrative about climate, it wants to reduce this, and I can only put it to the fact that somehow they think that we need to reduce the world population. It's sort of an anti-human agenda. And I just, like I say, in good conscience, I cannot stand up and support that. And quite frankly, I think if people around British Columbia and Canada knew this was what the agenda was, they wouldn't be supporting it either. And everybody I talk to, they have the same sort of response. They go like, oh my God, how could we as a country, how could we as a province want to actually do these things?
Wow, I am so happy to hear you talking like this, because so few politicians seem aware. We have had people talking about depopulation out loud, including Anthony Fauci and Bill Gates, and you kind of think that's got to be some kind of joke. But when you start seeing that all these food processing plants across the world have been somehow starting on fire, and then you see some of the world events that we faced this last 3 years, and the global push to with the nitrogen and carbon and reducing your animals, you begin wondering, with the UN Agenda 2030. I'm not certain if you know about that, but it does seem to lead to a concerted effort that's not very people positive.
Oh, it's anti-civilization. And, I really applaud, you mentioned the Dutch farmers and the pushback they had in the election. I mean, they've been protesting now for months over in the Netherlands over this whole agenda. The Dutch people, the Dutch farms are some of the most productive in the world. Per capita, they are the second most productive in terms of exporting food to the world. And they want to reduce this. They did this in Sri Lanka, where they actually eliminated using nitrogen-based fertilizer. And in the first year, it saw an immediate 30% reduction in their rice crop yields and an 18% reduction in their primary export, which is tea. And so you think, well, okay, what does that mean? Those are just numbers. What it meant is the country went into chaos. People were starving. There was civil unrest. They burned 28 politician homes. The president had to flee the country. I mean, this is massive problem, all because of trying to do something that, quite frankly, I don't think has any impact whatsoever in terms of our climate. And so it's just this madness is carrying on. There's other countries now as well that are looking at doing what Netherlands is going to do, which is basically to shut down 3,000 farms, take it out of production and turn it into parkland. And now we want, the federal government and the provincial government doesn't oppose this, want to see the same policies here in British Columbia and here in Canada. And I just look at it and I go, wait a second, things are going sideways. Like, we should actually be looking as a province at how we improve our food security, how we increase the amount of food we produce so that we are not reliant on other jurisdictions and what's going on. But it just seems to be completely backwards of what these politicians want to do here in this province.
It really is backwards. And we have other things going on here in BC. The Cobalt Red with the subsidies for electric cars and things like that. What's your position on that?
Well, I looked at it and I thought, okay, we use cobalt in everything that we do. It's in our phones, it's in our computers, it's in our laptops. It's in everything. It's in now in of course, vehicles, electric powered vehicles and electric powered bikes. And I think, we have to find a way to be able to solve this problem that's going on in the Congo. This idea that tens of thousands of children are in there, mining, putting in long, long days, getting paid $1 or $2 at most, subjecting themselves to horrible environmental conditions, in some cases, dying and being killed simply because they're trying to mine some cobalt. And I looked at it and thought, this is unacceptable. We should actually be trying to change this. And as a province, why would we subsidize batteries and subsidize cars using these batteries that come from child labor and in some cases slave labor? And the conditions are absolutely horrific. Why are we trying to improve our environment by destroying theirs? And so I took a stand and said, you know what, I think we should actually stop this subsidies for these electric vehicles and electric bikes because morally, we should actually be trying to figure out how we help these people not take advantage of the misery and suffering that they're facing here in the Congo. And then on top of that, of course, as a province, we actually give the privilege of using HOV lanes to people that own electric vehicles. And I think, why is it that taxpayers that can't afford an electric vehicle are subsidizing people that are purchasing this electric vehicle and then giving them access to things like HOV lanes simply because they're using an electric vehicle? And I just think those sort of policies as a government should change. We should make a statement. And quite frankly, we should ask other jurisdictions to make the same statement so that maybe we can find a way to try to improve conditions for the people in the Congo.
That is so refreshing to hear you talking like this. And I believe that you have a large number of British Columbians that are right in line and in sync, and that the Liberal, BC Liberal Party has really lost the plot on how people are feeling about all of these issues. You just think about the numbers. If we all have electric cars one day, first of all, how far can you go? Can you even drive to Kelowna without having to stop somewhere to get it, to get your car recharged? And what if the grid goes down? I mean, you're totally stuck.
Well, you're absolutely right. Then people haven't even thought this whole thing through. So there's the moral issue of what's going on in the Congo. And, we're a global citizen, right? We should think of ourselves as being part of the world, not just, our own little corner of the world. But if you look at transportation in British Columbia alone, transportation uses about 30% of the overall energy we consume in this province. And most of that, 84% of that comes from fossil fuels. If we wanted to completely replace transportation in this province, you would need to triple the amount of electricity that we use. If you want to replace using fossil fuels and use electricity, that's what you'd have to do. So you're talking 3 times all of the dams, 3 times the grid, reinforcing all of the infrastructure in cities and in homes for charging, not to mention, all of the additional investments that would have to be made around that. You can't do that with things like solar and wind. It's not practical. They aren't, first of all, they aren't reliable, but also just the cost and the fact that they don't last long and then you got to rebuild them. So how are we going to do this? It seems to be, it's just about virtue signaling for votes. It's not about the realistic plan in terms of what we can do as a province. And furthermore, it actually would drive people into poverty. I mean, half the people in this province today can't afford to put food on the table. They're struggling. And we're talking about trying to drive up their costs for energy. It makes no sense to be doing this.
It absolutely doesn't, and it just makes so much sense, and it just does my heart good to hear someone talking about this, because it seems like the whole news media is completely going with the agenda, like they've been bought off, paid off to just talk this climate nonsense, and the gentleman that you had retweeted, he's got a lot of facts behind him, and there's a lot of people that are in complete disagreement with this notion that we're freaking our children out, that we're facing all of this climate meltdown. And they said actually Florida probably wouldn't be there by 2010, and Florida's doing
I
just
know
fine.
it's
Like
the
so much
predictions that
lies.
the predictions they've come out, of course, all of them being wrong. But here's one thing that really disturbed me, and this is one of the things that really pushed me along this. I had a group of students come in, young students come into my office, and they're concerned about recycling, and there's some issues there. I won't go into that. But when we were talking about one of the solutions could be, one of the children spoke up and said, "Well, it doesn't matter anyway because the world's going to come to end in 12 years." And I thought about that, and I thought, these young children, this is their future. They should be
Yes.
optimistic about their future. We should be trying to provide them with the best opportunities we can in our society and promoting what they could possibly do. We shouldn't be filling them with these thoughts of doom and gloom and
Fear mongering.
stealing their hopes and dreams. Why are we doing this? It made no sense.
Yeah, absolutely, John. And suicides are up, kids are unhappy, depression's up, opioid use is up, all kinds of things. In fact, our next guest is going to be talking about that. But there's also this issue that British Columbia is pretty much the last province. I'm not sure if Nova Scotia is in as well, but has not hired back their unvaccinated doctors and healthcare workers. And that's a
Yeah,
travesty.
it is. It's a huge problem, and it's tied in, of course, with a bill that the legislature moved forward, Bill 36 as well, which sort of reframes a bunch of the healthcare. And this was something I've been championing, was we need to drop the mandates for our healthcare workers and hire back. Many of them was willing to come back and work. We're in a crisis right now with our healthcare system in British Columbia. You talk about, just the other day I had a lady come in and send me a note about a healthcare problem she has, and she needs surgery, and so we're in Northern Health, and she's being told she's going to have to wait 24 to 36 months to be able to get surgery to get a hip replacement. And I just thought about it, and I thought, we have, I think the allied health workers are saying that it's about 7,000 workers that were fired or quit and left the system because of the mandates. We need to be every single one they can. Just one doctor can make such a difference, especially in small communities. A handful of nurses would make a huge difference. And when you talk to the people in the system, they're burnt out, they're stretched thin. We have continually having these diversions from emergency rooms that are closed, going down to other. Like, we've got a mess. The whole system is on the verge of collapse. We need to be completely rethinking how we deliver healthcare in this province, and quite frankly in this country. But it starts by recognizing the shortages we have, hiring people back, treating people, with respect, and trying to find ways to support them and work with them to improve the system. But it's, like I say, and so I asked Bonnie Henry this about him hiring him back. She said, "Nope, we're not going to do that." I put the question in the question period to the minister. His minister said, "Nope, sorry, we're not going to do that." And I just look at it and I think, this is about ideology. This isn't about people. Last summer, there was a court case. I think Brian Day and the province had a fight in the court, and the province actually argued. Essentially, they were arguing that the system was more important than people suffering. And the sad part is the judge agreed with them, and that is really sad when you think about the state of what we're facing here in British Columbia for healthcare.
Boy, that is something. And Bonnie Henry continues to shock us with her the damage that has been caused actually to British Columbia through the mandates, everything that she's gone along with. She hasn't been able to stand up. I mean, here's a woman who fought for nurses to not have to wear masks at in a time past, who now is, has been very much for the masks and on children, and the harms are just endless, and that's all coming out. We don't really understand what the logic is. Why BC? Is that because we're an NDP province? Like, how do we get you to be our premier? That's what we need, John.
Well, I mean, ultimately, if we want to bring out change in this province, it is about politics, and it's about people joining a party. And I encourage people to look at the conservativebc.ca website and think about joining the party, because ultimately, people need to stand up. We need good candidates to stand up. We need people to be involved. This needs to be a grassroots movement, and if we can achieve that, we can actually bring about change. And quite frankly, if we do, we'll bring about change forever with politics. Not because we would be in power forever, but we'd put policies and things in place that future governments would not be able to change, so that there would be transparency and there would be a government that actually is focused on people in this province. And so that's what I'm hoping to be able to achieve. That's why I've joined the Conservative Party, and that's why I'm traveling the province, encouraging people to look at what we're doing, look at our platform, and to join us in this movement.
Well, I appreciate you so much. And we just encourage all of our listeners. We have a lot of people from British Columbia, across Canada. Keep your eye on what Mr. Rustad is doing, because this is the way of the future. Somehow a whole part of society seems to have lost the plot. They've gone into all of these agendas. It's out of touch with the real grassroots people, and we need folks like you to stand up, and you've done that. I love your story, and I know everyone does, because people are talking about you behind your back, John, and it's all good. It's all good. So please keep going. I encourage everyone to sign up for the BC, the Conservative Party of BC. Is that correct? That would be the way to say it.
That's correct.
Conservative Party of BC. You get your membership, and then, sooner or later, I'm not certain when the next election in BC is.
Next election in BC is going to be, a scheduled election is October of 2024. So we've got about 18 months. We've got a long way to go and a short time to get there. But, we're going to work hard, and we're going to fight for the people in British Columbia. And we're hoping that people will join us in this fight, so that we can, see a province that I think we'd all be proud of.
Mr. Rustad, thank you for your amazing courage. It's inspiring. Thank you.
Laura-Lynn, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be on the show here today.
You're welcome. I like him. There are so few. You're talking about 0.0000001% of people that are able and willing to stand up like Mr. Rustad. Normally, this is what we've seen happen in politics. You get voted in. You then toe the line of anything that your leader says, no matter what ridiculous agenda they're following. And you don't have the courage to stand up for the people, because you're too worried about keeping your paycheck and your position and all the perks that come with being a politician. And John Rustad just showed he had to stand up for his riding, for farmers, and this is amazing. This is exactly what we need. God help the rest of them. All right, before we go to our next guest, who I believe is waiting in Murray, Coulter is going to join us to talk about the opioid and drug crisis that we have going on. But could we run that clip of Tucker Carlson explaining sort of because there's a big brewing issue today going on with Tucker, with Trump down in the United States of America. I thought, I keep turning my phone off. It just somehow gets on. So I know. So I want to give a little explanation for you that are wondering, what is this all about, and this stormy payment and whatever. Tucker has a good way of explaining it. We just got a little clip from what he said. Take a look.
The headline here is that there is, as noted, a presidential race in progress right now. And if you check the polls, you will find that Trump is leading the Republican field. That's the unprecedented thing. Taking out your opponent using the justice system. If the Democratic Party is allowed to do this, allowed to crush the presidential frontrunner, the main threat to their power, with a bogus criminal case, where does that leave us? We're done. Because that precedent will live forever. And voters will never again determine the outcome of a presidential election. It's remarkable when you think about it. So after all the yelling from permanent Washington about January 6th and how it was a threat to our democratic norms and the peaceful transfer of power, They've decided to completely short-circuit our democratic norms, not to mention the peaceful transfer of power, using the courts and prosecutors. What happens if they get away with this? No one seems to be thinking this through. Everyone's all spun up, but what happens if they get away with this? If they use the Justice Department, in full view of everyone, to settle a political score and to keep the White House, just to take a guy out of the race who seems to be doing fairly well? We'll destroy the justice system. And that's not a small thing. A functioning justice system has kept this country peaceful for hundreds of years. The purpose of a justice system is to administer justice so that citizens don't have to do it themselves. You outsource that duty to the government. But what happens when you take that away? When there is no justice system? What happens when the Department of Justice decides that its goal is not justice, but protecting the ruling class at all costs? Think about that. People are still going to demand justice. The desire for justice is an inherent human desire. We are born with it. But if there's no neutral place to do it, some people will decide they're going to have to do it themselves. Ooh. Now, we don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but we can say for certain it's going to be really ugly.
So this is really happening globally, where the weaponization of the justice system in order to bring about your preferred candidate to be put into power politically. This is happening a lot of places, but I think even in Canada, our justice system seems to be completely corrupt. They don't know their up from down with respect to what all of these mandates and things that were put in across our country. What was proper, what our Charter of Rights and Freedoms really stands for, which we now kind of know and feel might be nothing. If judges will not uphold the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, then you don't have anything in Canada. So what's happening in the United States is we've got this one guy, he was elected in this one county or whatever, one state, and he basically ran on, I'm going to get Donald Trump. And so Donald Trump is definitely a figure that is, you either love him or you hate him. And definitely there's people on all sides of this. But Tucker's point was very, very good. And even if you don't like Donald Trump, you need to understand something. If you lose the ability to make sure that the justice system is not being used incorrectly to go after someone, then you lose everything, because you have to have the balance of justice and truth and the political side of things. And from what I'm understanding, when I watched the entire segment, and I do encourage you to find it on YouTube, but there is no truth that Donald Trump should be taken to task on this, and certainly not as a felony indictment. Absolutely not. He's already been cleared of all of that, and he has always maintained his innocence with respect to this woman. And I do think Tucker pointed out that people make these payments to someone who's a big pain in the butt. Sometimes you have to make payments. You have to, because someone comes after you, and the nonsense that they're spewing is not worth the trouble of defending, but rather just make them go quiet and run along. You wanted money anyways. So I'm not defending Donald Trump's past. I am saying that we are all forgiven of our pasts, and the people that are Christian that seem to really revile and hate Donald Trump because, he's been married this many times and, has been sort of a millionaire, billionaire, playboy, whatever he is. Definitely millionaire now. He's the only president in all of history to lose money being a president, because it's been so costly to him. Wow. But I do know that the Lord forgives every one of us for our prior sins, and God has forgiven him. And because there are people in the know that he gave his heart to the Lord, that he is has been one of the best presidents of all time, that he has a lot of Spanish people now voting for him. The people, the Black Lives Matter people, there's a lot of African American people now turning towards Donald Trump. There's a whole movement. Don't be believing the news that that's not happening. No, they're all going, what have the Democrats ever done for us? Defunding the police? Do you think that if you're African American in a bad part of town where these thugs and ignorant young people are burning down buildings and hurting people and being violent, do you think that defunding the police is a good idea? Well, if you're Nancy Pelosi or someone like that, you do. Or that woman what's that lady that was talking last night, JT, that African American lady, and she's the one, and she said, and if you see any of Trump's constituent people, in restaurants, make a scene, yell at them. Don't let them, if you see them at a gas station, right? This woman is vile. She's hateful, right? And it's so funny that they are what they are accusing others of being. So very interesting. So should we look at election interference then, JT? All right. So show me something that you have there. I know we have MP Michael Chong. Okay, let's go with that. So he asks
Professor
a
Lupac,
witness
concerning the use of racism by the Chinese Communist Party to further its foreign interference operations. Is it the case that the CCP's propaganda has a racial angle? In other words, does the CCP use race to convince those who are ethnically Chinese that they owe an allegiance to the motherland as a way to further their foreign interference operations here? Is it part of their toolkit in their foreign interference operations here in Canada?
A brief answer, if you could, please, Dr. Lupac. Thank you.
The simple answer is yes. And there are some terrific people who have written about this, to the extent to which the CCP systematically instrumentalizes racism, in particular to thwart policy action against it, such as foreign agent registries.
So I'd like to see all of this really dealt with, blown up. Let's blow this puppy up. What's going on, right? Why do we have all of this stuff happening? This seems very wrong. Seems like something's not right. And with all that we know, all the leaks that we're concerned about, it's interesting that they're just so upset about the CSIS leaks rather than the information that's coming out. And very clearly, we have a problem in our country. This could be the thing. This is the growing cancer in Trudeau's government that could take him out. I pray that it does. It does seem like he keeps getting away with everything, but this is important. If you lose election integrity, if even your liberal people are upset about it, that's a problem. When the reporters and the mainstream media begins to have a furor and an anger about it, that's a problem for Mr. Trudeau. So I'm kind of hoping that there's going to be a lot more on this, and it could lead. I think they did a vote, didn't they? That maybe it could lead to a confidence vote, and that was squelled today because Katie Telford's going to do this. So it almost could have been a confidence vote, right? So does that mean, I don't know as much about this as JT does or some of you out there, but does that mean that that if they didn't go to that confidence vote, that maybe Mr. Trudeau doesn't feel confident that he would have survived that? Do you think? If the NDP didn't support him. Yeah. So he may not be feeling as confident as he once did because he's not willing to stand. All right. So we have on Monday, Australian Senator James Patterson discussed China's meddling to get Justin Trudeau reelected. The whole world is talking about this. Take a look.
The most recent case study that we have is from Canada, where leaked documents from the Canadian Intelligence Agency sets out pretty clearly what was the Chinese Communist Party's objectives of intervening in previous Canadian elections. Most interesting, I thought, from those leaked documents is the assessment of the Canadian intelligence community that the outcome that the Chinese government most preferred was not just the re-election of the Trudeau government, but the re-election of the Trudeau government in minority. And a comment was attributed to a Chinese government official as part of that intelligence assessment that, quote, "We like it when parties are fighting between each other, as if division and discord and disagreement are an objective and an end in of itself for our potential adversaries."
Isn't it interesting, eh? We do love discord. We do love drama in politics. That is exactly what's going on. And my Rumble is frozen. Is Rumble doing okay? Okay. All is well there. All right. Let's look. Can we do the Ed Dowd speaks on how COVID is being used to bring down the economic system? That's safe? Yeah. Have a look at this.
Here's my opinion.
Love this
COVID
guy.
was a very clever way of introducing a control system. You know, let's say if they were completely successful, and they haven't been in the U.S., but other countries they are, you shut down the ability to travel, you shut down the ability to gather, you shut down the ability to communicate, and you bring in censorship so everyone's confused and addled while the financial system collapses. You can blame a virus, and now we have wars coming, they'll blame those. But the bottom line is the system is collapsing, and everything you see going on, in my humble opinion, lays at the feet of central bankers and politicians. And they're going to do everything in their power to point the finger at something else. And it's just the system is at its end. And they want, and you know, if you're in power and the system's going to collapse, and you know it is, and it can't be avoided, wouldn't it be nice to control that collapse and usher in a new system where you're on top? And it's a consolidation of wealth and power. And not every oligarch that we see in the newspaper is in the club, because a lot of these oligarchs, unfortunately, took the jab, but they didn't get saline solution. There are oligarchs that are freaking out, because if you didn't get the memo on the COVID virus coming and the fact that the vaccine might harm you, you're not in the club, and there's lots of those people.
All right. So as we're watching what's going on with the banks and potentially the fact that we have people literally planning the demise economically, they haven't done us well. They haven't had a dollar backed by gold. And now some people saying that the dollar bills are now basically worth the money they're printed on as soon as somebody calls in these things. Well, I know that that's a very simplified version of what's happening, but the United States of America, the houses have dropped now today. Housing has dropped for the first time in 10 years, and they can see it, you know, on the graph that it's, and nobody quite knows how that's going to come up. Mortgages are up at 6.6%. The Canadian dollar, it's $1.40 to buy $1 US. I think that's a problem. And we recommend gold and silver if you've got some money in the bank, because if you take your dollar that's worth $1 today, Lord willing, and you put that money into silver, silver or gold, that is a hard asset. That is in your hands. It's not devaluing. In fact, they're predicting huge valuations going up. So very important. Let's do one more clip before we go to our guest. Joe Rogan is speaking about the ideological shift between the right and the left. This is fascinating.
The culture shift between right and left authoritarianism, and now people don't recognize that if you just stopped looking at it in terms of red and blue, look at the actions. Whether it's war, suppression of free speech, pharmacological interventions that are mandatory, right, whatever it is, that used to all be associated with the authoritative right, the authoritarian right. And now those things are being embraced by the left. And I just think it's just an ideology thing. And I think we get confused and we think we're on the right side. We're on the right side. And if it's our side that's saying this, for sure that's the right thing to do. And no one's critically thinking about this.
Yeah, so we're seeing this all over the place. Look what just happened with Mr. Rustad today. We saw in a provincial political landscape that basically he's in the BC Liberal Party, but all of a sudden they're like, you toe the line on this climate stuff. Doesn't matter what happens to the constituents who actually elected you to represent them. No, you are now to toe this line. And Mr. Rustad said, no, I cannot do that. And so is, left or right? No, we're finding that we're coming together based on a firm belief of what we think is right. And that is the most shocking part of looking at. You can see it in the United States with the Republicans. You've got rhinos, Republican in name only, but many of these Republicans now sharing the same thoughts on the Ukraine and Russia, like they're in line with the Democrats. When even our federal politics in Canada is in line on the same issue, you need to pay attention to that. Something's wrong. How on earth can you be on the same page as Justin Trudeau on anything? And lots of Conservative Party members are not on the same page that the Conservative Party leader is taking right now with respect to the war between the Ukraine and Russia. They're not. But are they allowed to say anything? No. Silence. Toe the party line. And that's been the problem. So I would like to welcome to the show a gentleman that knows an awful lot about what is going on. You've seen that there are terrible numbers with respect to the opioid crisis and drugs being made legal in Canada. So would like to bring on Murray Coulter to give us a little bit of understanding. Thank you, Murray. I know you've had a tough time getting on today, but you persevered and you're here. Thank you.
Yeah, I have. Nice to see you. Am I coming across?
Yes.
Okay, great.
It's
I just wanted
fantastic.
to show you one little thing.
Sure.
There's another old Bible,
Oh,
just like your dad had.
I love it.
Yeah, I hope one day one of my daughters will look at some of the stuff I've underlined in there.
That, you know what? That's why I'm underlining so much these days. And I've got a couple different Bibles going because I got 3 kids. So, I want to make sure that they see the stuff that I thought was important the same way. It means so much to me to see what my dad thought was important to underline. Isn't it a beautiful gift? What
It
a
sure
treasure. What a treasure to leave your children. So that's
just
wonderful.
Keep quoting out of it because it's powerful. God's
It
word
is.
will not return unto him void, but it'll accomplish what he sets it out to do, right?
Absolutely,
And
Murray.
people are ignoring God's word, and I think that's why we're in such a mess. People don't want to hear what God has to say, and unfortunately, it must sadden God's heart to know that people are putting him aside and listening to the powers that be, the powers that want more power. And we're so fortunate that we have a loving Father that loves us so much. I was born in Victoria in 1949. That's a long time ago. Victoria's a great city. I've got 5 children, 4 daughters and a son, and 17 grandchildren. And I've done a little pastoring. I've done a little writing. I've done a lot of things, but a lot of my life I've spent recovering from situations that I have had to endure because of some poor choices. And I just want people to know that God is able to heal you, set you free, and that's important. I don't think our chief, medical officer, Bonnie Henry, really understands that God is able, and they've taken when we started a recovery house back in 2007 with some other people and got it off the ground, and it was a women's recovery house, and we had a lot of trouble with mental health and addictions because right from the get-go they thought that Christ-based program was not worthy. But we did prove that it was worthy and that women did respond, and some got accepted the Lord, some got baptized. And the Christ-based recovery program works very well with the 12 steps. It historically works excellent, and people can recover. Now, this is what Bonnie Henry has to say. She says, abstinence is this is a quote from her, abstinence is an important treatment model for people who have addictions to alcohol, but it does not work for opioid addiction because it is chronic, relapsing brain disease. And we know that abstinence is, especially in the same way that we did it with alcohol, just doesn't work for people who have dependency on opioids. Henry said, if anyone had fentanyl, it's a great drug, and certainly I had it when I had a colonoscopy not that long ago. And you can see why people feel good on this drug. And physical dependence on opioids can happen very quickly, and that's one thing we're trying to work on. You know, for our chief medical officer to tell people basically they're hopelessly addicted to opioids and that there is no way they can be abstinent. She goes on to say that a lot of doctors in the province have been advising addicts to abstain from drugs. And, you know, those doctors probably see their patients and know that their patients are hurting. And if they continue to down the road they're going, they're going to drop off. You know, it's like, you know, this 2.5 milligrams or 2.5 ounces of fentanyl or any other opioid or any other drug, it will kill you. It's like give them enough rope and they'll hang themselves. It really is a poor policy.
I'm so glad to hear you talking like that, because that is sort of the impression we get, is that, you know, once you're hooked on to this, that, you know, that's it, and just a life. Now, I do know somebody who has been recovered from heroin now for many years, and it was just by his relationship with Jesus that, you know, it changed everything. But many people are finding hope. But yes, it's a tough thing. Was that, I know that, so you say that you went through recovery and stuff like that. Was that your drug of choice, or is that okay to ask you, or was it something else? Or
No, that's okay to ask. I think it's important that we use some of our experience to help others along the way. I started using drugs back in the 70s when I met my wife, actually just before. And we both got Hep C because we used a dirty needle. We didn't know at the time that it was so easy to contact Hep C. There was very little known about Hep C. So I got a type Geno 1 that is quite deadly, and I had ended up 50 years later chronically ill and terminal and had to get a liver transplant. So if it wasn't for a wonderful team of doctors at UBC and Vancouver General Hospital, I don't think I know I wouldn't be here today. And God spoke into my life and gave me hope and a future. And that's something he can do for anyone. But we have to be willing to trust, and we have to be willing to put our, you know, where there's life, there's hope. And so people, no matter how bad it gets, it's not over till it's over. The time to quit using drugs, I believe abstinence is so important. And I know from my own experience that I quit using drugs because I was challenged to do so. And if there's no consequences for your actions, like I got busted, you know, you asked the question, so I want to just address it.
Thank you.
I got busted for trafficking in heroin, and I would have got 10 years, but the police knew that I was kind of a gentle guy, you know, even though I was using drugs and selling them to support my own habit. I was kind of a gentle guy, and I had the RCMP from Parksville come out and say, look, we will let you go, and we won't pursue you, even though the charges were pending. And so I did. I took Rita, my wife, and we left, and we went to Calgary, and we came off heroin cold turkey. And it was, you know, it was a little bit difficult, but, you know, no pain, no gain. You've got to be willing to suffer a little bit, because suffering sometimes brings great joy.
Wow. And so you were able to come off of that then. And could you explain to me, Murray, the difference between heroin and opioids, or is that pretty much the same thing?
Yeah, heroin is an opioid.
Okay.
It's in the class of opioids. Fentanyl is 50 times stronger than heroin and 100 times stronger than morphine. And one of the biggest concerns right now is that fentanyl is ending up on the streets of Calgary and in Ontario and in Vancouver, laced with another drug that is a very strong respiratory depressant. And it's for those that come across it, it is sorry.
That's all right.
It's xylazine and benzodiazepine, and it does not respond to Narcan. So the thing about it, they're finding it in drugs, specifically fentanyl and other drugs that are laced with fentanyl, and Narcan, which is a precursor to help you overcome the opioid that's going to your brain, that's shutting down your respiratory system and everything. Narcan counteracts that and helps you come back out of that death experience. And so it's not working now with these drugs that are laced with and these are animal tranquilizers that are very, very potent and very, very deadly, and they're ending up on our streets. So if we're going to allow, allowing 2.5 grams of drugs is one thing, but allowing 2.5 grams of fentanyl is something entirely different. We have a sister who is an anesthesiologist in Georgia, and she says she's been giving fentanyl to her patients for years, and that 50 micrograms can, if you're a frail elderly person, can cause you to stop breathing. There is 2,000 micrograms in one street capsule or tablet of fentanyl.
Wow.
So 2.5 milligrams of fentanyl is 2.5 million micrograms of fentanyl.
Right. So you've been bringing this up because the BC government is basically stating that that's an allowable amount to be on a person. Is that right?
Yes, they've made this new exemption, right? And it says under this exemption, adults 18 and older in BC are not going to be arrested or charged for possessing small amounts of certain illegal drugs for personal use, up to 2.5 grams. The illegal drugs covered by the exemption are opioids such as heroin, morphine, and fentanyl, crack, meth, and cocaine powder. They're all included in this 2.5. Our anesthesia sister says if you start mixing fentanyl with cocaine or other drugs on the street, it even makes it far more deadly.
Right. So this drug that you're talking about that's laced in with the fentanyl and it's not responding to Narcan, well, who's doing that? Why is that being made? Why is that available? Who's doing this, allowing this?
It makes me wonder. We've been out on the street lately. At least my wife was out the other night, and I was out a couple of weeks ago. But talking to drug addicts and homeless people in downtown Courtenay, and when we asked them this question, what do you think about the decriminalization of drugs? Now, their impression, and they're all saying this, and they're all very adamant about it, is they're trying to kill us.
Wow.
That is how they feel about it. So how is that helping the addict? What they're doing with the decriminalization, how is that helping the addict be not stigmatized? Because in my thinking, when your chief medical officer says you can't overcome this, you're hopelessly addicted, basically is what she said, then doesn't that cause a stigma on those people? No matter what you try to, how you try to candy coat it, it's still a stigma, right?
Yes. And so that is fascinating that the people on the street, so people like Bonnie Henry and the powers that be, or our government, Trudeau, it looks like they want to decriminalize some of these drugs, but the very people that this would affect are saying they're trying to kill us.
Absolutely. I've heard it from the mouth of just about every, people will sit in a group and you'll ask them in a group setting, what do you think about decriminalization? Oh, they're just trying to kill us. You know, they have a very negative attitude about it. So how is this helping?
And that could very well be true. Why not? You know, they don't care. They don't care about our elders. For the last 3 years, they've done things to allow the elderly to die alone, to not get good care, to not get early treatment. They've done a whole lot of things for a certain part of society that they deem to be sort of, you know, sucking up the monies that are available. And so why not target and do things, whether, you know, I think it is consciously, that are just going to cause more harm. And then, oh, well, then you don't have that one person to be a problem, or two or three or the 100 that are taken out because of these sort of policies.
I talked to a woman in the office next to the deputy minister of mental health and addictions, and I told her what I thought was going wrong, and I said I think the government's very misguided in making these exemptions. And she said, well, let's just let it go for a few months and see what happens. And I thought, are you willing to, you know, gamble with these people's lives for 2 or 3 months and see what happens? Like, that doesn't sound very professional to me.
Right. But they do seem to be willing to do that.
Mm-hmm.
How does one get free then? You believe that you can be free. Does Suboxone and things like that? I know that there's a new shot that people can get, Subulon, or I don't know.
Right.
But it's sort of tapering you off of the opioids over like a 3-month period. Have you heard of that?
I think there are some experimental drugs out there, and we have to remember that this program is supposed to be a pilot program. They've taken the expertise from Portugal and using that as a model for BC. But the trouble with that is that Portugal, unlike BC, the police in Portugal say that fentanyl has not shown up on the streets. It's in very small numbers. But in downtown Vancouver, fentanyl is a drug of choice. It's in everything. So these poisons and this benzodiazepine that's ending up in the drugs and killing people, and Narcan doesn't work against that, it's just going to exacerbate the situation and cause more overdose deaths. So what I was saying about Portugal is they don't have a problem with fentanyl like we do here in BC. So how can you use that as a model? It doesn't seem sensible to me.
Right. That doesn't make any sense at all. You and your wife, you were kind enough to give us a bit of your story. So I'm thinking right now about people who are watching who have loved ones or are struggling themselves. And you were able to come off heroin cold turkey. And was that the end for you and your wife? Like you really gave it all up?
I think it was more for it was initially, we had a little money. We went up to my mom, started cooking roast beef dinners for us and potatoes and gravy, which really helped. And because we were just, our health was shot. But anyways, we got some horses and stuff. And yes, we put our energy into something else, and we were able to stay off it. I wasn't quite as successful being 100% clean, but today I am, and I have been for years, for quite a few years. And I think that's why God used us in the recovery program to help get this program going in Courtney here because of our drug experience. And really, people like us who have a sincere heart working with addicts and helping addicts can really understand and have compassion for them because we know what it's like, what we've been through, and that experience can really help others. And
Yes,
yes,
and
they can overcome.
you're able to help. Yeah, you're able to give hope because there's nobody who knows better than someone like yourself. I appreciate this, Murray. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. And I just know this is a very sad issue that we're dealing with across Canada, and it's affecting a lot of families. And so we do not support the decriminalization of drugs. That is not a good policy in your books.
No. Do we have a minute yet,
Yes,
Laura-Lynn?
yes, sure, please.
I'd like to here's a poem I wrote that I think has a lot of hope in it. Um, I wrote it back in the 70s, late 70s when I was coming out of addiction. But walking down life's highway beneath a heavy load, the burden on your back is more than you can hold. The many miles have wearied you, and there's dust upon your toes. Your eyes are black from darkness, and you've worn out all your clothes. Your mind is in confusion, and your heart is cold as steel. Love is just a memory, but nothing you can feel. Look up, you wandering traveler, to the hill called Calvary. The Savior there was crucified for folks like you and me. So don't you worry about Jesus. He's saved men like you before. Just hearken to his gentle voice and open up the door. Confess his name before men and he'll remember you. For every word that Jesus spoke is powerful and true. Then before you go another mile, compel the Son of Man to walk along beside you and take you by the hand onto a different highway. Though narrow it may be, the difference in God's highway is it leads to victory. Whatever is your burden, you can lay at Jesus' feet. You can be a son of God and never know defeat. I know that this is true, my friend, for not very long ago, I was walking down life's highway with no place I could go.
Wow. Thank you so much. Oh, that is so touching and beautiful. And you wrote that so many years ago.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Murray, you're a special person. I bet you're helping a lot of people. And I appreciate your insight today as one who's been there and been free. I appreciate the hope that you're bringing to a lot of mums and dads right now, and the hope that you're
Thank you.
bringing to somebody who's watching, who knows that you believe that they can be free. Is there
Amen.
anywhere that someone could contact you, or are you on? Is there a website or an
I'm just
email?
I'm just on Facebook, so
Okay.
they could send me a link or a friend request.
Okay.
I can be contacted by email at mcoulter444 at gmail.com. So it's mcoulter444 at gmail.com.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and we want to thank you, Laura-Lynn. I appreciated your honesty and your reporting at the Ottawa truck rally. You know, you were one of the
Yeah.
ones that brought us firsthand insight into what was going
From the
on.
street.
I just thank God for you as well, and I know that we're all working together to do the best we can and to be servants. And we want to walk in the truth because the truth shall set them free, right?
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much. Thank you for your kind words and for the work that you do. We'll keep your email because someone might write us and would like to maybe just have a prayer or encouragement or what they should do to help them
Thank
to
you.
be free and never give up. Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Blessings to you and your wife. Thank you. Wonderful. Wow. It's a serious issue. And I've helped out in recovery. I've been a volunteer for many years doing Bible studies at a recovery home. And I've seen death, and I've seen a lot of pain, and a lot of pain for parents. So it is a very important issue. Before we go, I love Naomi Wolf. Dr. Naomi Wolf, please, somehow, someone, we need to get a hold of her. Oh man, we are trying hard to get an interview with Dr. Naomi Wolf. So she's reporting on severe kidney-related injuries that are now becoming more and more known. So take a look at what she has to say.
Acute kidney injury and acute renal failure following Pfizer mRNA COVID vaccination. 33% of patients died. Pfizer concludes, quote, no new safety issue. You heard that right. A third of the patients died, and Pfizer's conclusion was there was no new safety issue. So very briefly, the key points in this report include that 69 patients, and this is yet another example, Steve, of illegal, deadly experimentation on children and tiny babies. 69 patients, including one infant, suffered acute kidney injury or acute renal failure. The vaccine was not authorized for infants during this time. So where are they getting the bodies of these tiny children that they continue to experiment on illegally? That demands its own investigation. Pfizer's renal, meaning kidney, adverse event reports screen only for the most severe damage, but miss important, less severe kidney damage. They just don't count the less severe kidney damage. Thus, Pfizer's post-marketing kidney adverse events are likely significantly underreported. And again, this is the sneaky science that you saw throughout our reports. Half of these severe renal adverse events, meaning kidney adverse events, were reported within 4 days of vaccination. So again, you see that narrow window, correlation is not causation, but if it happens, within a few days, it looks bad. And 67% of kidney adverse events patients were women. Again, everyone should recognize that this is a scarily consistent theme on every single metric almost, that women are 2/3 overrepresented among the people who are injured with various organ systems in various ways.
So wasn't that a fascinating point that she brought up about where are they getting the babies? Is this like some volunteer program? Oh, you'd have to render me incapacitated and almost dead to take my child and do anything with them anywhere near any of this stuff that's going on, because it's your child. Who's volunteering? Where are they getting the kids for that? That's so interesting, isn't it? Oh my goodness. All right. Now we talked yesterday about the Israeli. There's a. Would you mind not sneezing when we're on air? So there's some people trying to put in a bill in Israel to ban anyone to be, telling anyone about Jesus. And so it could put people in prison. There's a bill being put forward. So pro-Israel evangelicals are urging Netanyahu to stop ultra-Orthodox bill to outlaw sharing the good news of Jesus in Israel. So you can bet he's probably getting quite a lot of people speaking to him about this. But what does Netanyahu do when the United States of America is no longer really acting like a friend to them? There's a lot going on, man. So this is an interesting final video we'll show you. A Christian school in Vermont has been completely banned from playing in all sports after the girls' basketball team refused to play another team because it had a transgender athlete. Wow, take a look.
Mid-Vermont Christian School forfeited a state tournament girls basketball game because the opposing team had a transgender player on its roster. The school arguing a, quote, very real issue of safety was at play. What followed? A swift and sweeping penalty against the school's athletic program by the state's governing body, the Vermont Principals Association. It banned the high school from all competition in all sports moving forward.
Is that a bridge too far? No, I don't think it's a bridge too far. The athletes that we're talking about are unlikely to go on to some of the elite professional athletics. But that concept of discriminating against another young person, it causes long-term outcomes for trans youth because they're hearing rhetoric that is telling them that they're not valuable, that in fact they're dangerous.
The VPA said the high school violated the state's policy of support of transgender student athletes and building an inclusive community for each student to grow and thrive. In response, Mid-Vermont Christian School wrote that it would be appealing the decision, adding, "Canceling our membership is not a solution and does nothing to deal with the very real issue of safety and fairness facing women's sports in our beloved state."
These are kids. Kids should not feel like they're being ostracized and pushed away because of they are just figuring out who they are. That is absolutely the worst thing you could do to a child, no matter if they're 8 or 18.
Their case, it's more than an opinion. It's more of a religion. I mean, they're a Christian school, and they feel that their beliefs are being pushed aside.
The Mid-Vermont Christian School refused an interview with CNN, as did the school they originally refused to play against. But the on-court controversy has reignited debate about the inclusion and equity of transgender athletes.
If they choose not to play that team, then they should absolutely forfeit. But it's wrong to carry that over to other members of their community and other teams at the school.
Last year, the NCAA, the governing body for collegiate athletics, updated its policies on the issue, landing on a sport-by-sport approach. At the high school level, guidance on participation changes state by state, according to the latest data from the advocacy group GLSEN, with 25 states placing bans or restrictions on trans or non-binary athletes from playing.
How thoughtless of them not to be considerate of the girls that have been trying hard to make it in sports and are now up against a team that has boys in it. How thoughtless of them. This is the epitome of narcissism, where you cannot see that you are harming other people, except they're crying foul on the transgender kid. So, transgender above everything. It is the transgender religion. It is the new religion of the world, the transgender religion. You shall bow to this religion. Isn't it interesting that this is what has come to play? That this is what's important. Yesterday, we read the statement. Was that of the NHL guy, JT? And he just said, this is my religious view. And the school was now, and the other, folks are all, forcing everybody to wear transgender, whatever. This is not right to force these kinds of things on society. There's the transgender people that are de-transitioning all over YouTube, all telling their stories that society lulled them into it, encouraged them into it, but nobody's there for them when they find out that after they've cut their breasts off, if they're a dude, they've cut their privates off. There's no hope. You can't make one of those, it's gone. So now you're in a situation where you're not happy about your body. You have no sex life for the rest of your life. And society, they said, yeah, rah, this is a thing. This is good. Do it. No, now all these kids are wounded and hurt in a high suicidality category. And we've got all these crazy people. You saw who they interviewed. I mean, this one lady, she's got her colored hat on. Really, lady? I thought you'd probably be a feminist. I thought you'd probably be for women's rights. And somehow there's this huge blind spot that men can be women and women. have to celebrate that, or they're, a bigot or a transphobe and they don't want to be that. But they're still feminists, of course, and they want the best for women. And it seems lost on them that men are taking all these women's positions. They're completely blind. I'll never forget talking to a woman. It took me like about 25 good minutes. I knew she was a left-leaning person, woke person, okay? So I sat down. This was in Red Deer, Alberta. And I, was on her porch because we'd been doing some door knocking for the political party that I was in. And I sat down with her on a bench outside and basically went through, oh yes, how important it is to have women's issues. And then at the very tail end of it, I just said, oh, and we got into the transgender. Oh yes, we have to support the transgenders. And after I knew she was very pro-women, I said, well, what about the boy who wants to come in and take the girls' gold on a track meet, competition? What do you think about that? Oh, she sat there. It was so beautiful, completely perplexed by what was happening, completely perplexed. She didn't know what to say. She didn't quite know how to answer that. And she finally just sat back. She says, well, I don't really know about that. And then she changed the subject, and that was that. So all I can say is it's wrong. Girls are girls, boys are boys. I think you should have a transgender team. And the transgender boys and transgender girls, and I do mean biologically, they can all play together and let them do whatever they want to do. So with respect to the dog, I think she's having an issue. Yeah, so we might need Shane to just let her out. Yeah. Could you do that? It's a problem. Okay, so my website is Laura-Lynn.tv. Thank you very much. Laura-Lynn live at Proton Mail is my email. And thank you very much. Anytime that you don't see me on any of the places you usually watch me and you're wondering where I've gone, well, just go to Laura-Lynn.tv and we've got the shows there, and we've got where our latest, all of our latest shows are there. If you'd want to perhaps help us and become someone who supports us in this, because this is our work. It's all we have. If we don't do this anymore, then we have to go and work at McDonald's, and even McDonald's doesn't really want us after they've seen some of the shows, and JT won't do it. But they don't want us after they've seen some of the things that we do. And can I tell you the honest truth is that most Christian organizations, can I be very honest with you, cannot speak or stand the way that we do here. God has given us a very unique opportunity to be able to say and to speak the truth without fear of retribution. Some of you out there really appreciate that I just say it like it is, in a way that most pastors don't want to, because, hey, their tithers are going to stop giving. We notice that a little bit around here when if politics gets involved, right? And some of you are very pro-Conservative Party of Canada, and I see like that, we face a little bit of backlash with donations and stuff, if we're talking about that, if I can be honest. But then I always, for me personally, I have to come back to the, digging into my soul about what the truth is and what I think Canada's facing. And I just feel compelled, no matter what the issue, that I need to tell you the truth. That might be my truth, 100%. You might have a completely different thought on something, and you may see it very differently. That's true. But what we do here, hopefully you see the value of, even when there's a day when you don't quite see something the way that I do. You value that we're a platform that is able to speak the truth according to the Word of God, and that we do not back down. The only way I'm able to do that is with your help. And so I appreciate when you go to our website and you see the donate button and you make a donation. It's very easy. In fact, you can do it anonymously. I want to thank our anonymous donors who for some reason do not want to be known. I appreciate it. I also want to thank many, many of you. Your names are important to me, and I appreciate that you see the value in what we do here. You can also write us at Box 48184, New Westminster, and it's V something, and it's on at the end of the show. So just go to the last screen, and you'll see it there today or any day. It's on the last thing that any show has. It's there. I'd really like to have a little graphic that says our box number. That would be helpful. But it's just been so many things to do. Okay. I'd like to read to you today as we close from 2 Corinthians 5. For we know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, an eternal house in heaven, not built by human hands. Meanwhile, we groan, longing to be clothed instead with our heavenly dwelling, because when we are clothed, we will not be found naked. For while we are in this tent, in this body, on this earth, we groan and are burdened because we do not wish to be unclothed, but to be clothed instead with our heavenly dwelling, so that what is mortal may be swallowed up by life. This whole part here, I'm going to underline it to show my kids what was important, that we long for heaven, that we're okay with death because we know Jesus, because this portion of scripture tells us that when we shed this earthly tent that we are in, so to speak, that we will be clothed with a heavenly garment, and it's eternal. And we'll never be unclothed or ashamed again. We will not have any memory of the horrible things that we did to mess up our lives, because it will be forgiven. And the Word of God says that when we get forgiven, it is put into the sea of forgetfulness, never to be remembered by God. Now, that's not true for some of us. We remember our errors all too often. But when we're in heaven one day, no more pain, no more mandates, no more worries about governments who seem to have deathly, awful agendas against us. No more worry about governments who might be trying to legalize drugs that take the lives of our loved ones. No more being at the mercy of any kind of tyrannical dictator. No worries about being poverty-stricken. No worries about not being loved, because when we are in this place, that heavenly dwelling, it will completely swallow up our earthly man, and it will be incredible. Now, the one who has fashioned us for this very purpose is God, who has given us the Spirit as a deposit, guaranteeing what is to come. Isn't that interesting? God has given us the Spirit that we have. We are body, soul, and spirit. And the Spirit is the only part that guarantees our heavenly existence. I would guess that the soul might be tied in there somehow. But this earthly body, this is decaying. It's growing old by the day. One day, it will just become dust. But our spirit and our soul, given to us by God, we function with it even now. It's a beautiful thing with eternal consequences, meaning we have to be careful and guard ourselves, because what we do here on this earth will reveal how we are compensated in heavenly wealth one day. I'm looking forward to it. So I'm going to work hard to have a great reward. We'll see you tomorrow. God bless.
You know, it's not easy to deliver the truth of what our sick world is doing, but for some of us, we feel that we have no choice. Because if we are silent about these abominable things, then we are letting evil go unchecked, and we cannot do that. For those of you wonderful people who are writing me and are sharing your encouragement, I am deeply grateful. Thank you for all the letters that you've been sending. Thank you for the donations and the support. I found out that in order to speak the truth, you have to become very, very strong. If you would go to my website at www.laura-lynn.tv, you'll find all of the ways that you can contact me. Remember, my friends, all is well. All is well. Thanks for joining me.